The drums thundered as Mama Adanna stepped into the circle. Fire crackled behind her, casting dancing shadows across her face. She threw her arms wide, and the village square erupted in cheers. 300 people pressed forward, children perched on shoulders, elders leaning on walking sticks, everyone hungry for her magic. "Tonight," she announced, her voice carrying over the crowd, "I will tell you about the day Chief Okafor's goat ate his wife's best wrapper." Laughter exploded before she even began. Mama Adanna's eyes sparkled as she transformed. Her body became the proud chief, chest puffed, then melted into the horrified wife, hands flying to her face. She acted out the goat's satisfied chewing, its stubborn refusal to apologize, the chase through the village that ended with the chief tangled in his own fence. By the time she finished, grown men were wiping tears from their eyes, women clutching their sides, unable to breathe. "Mama Adanna, you will kill us with laughter," someone shouted. She bowed deeply, soaking in their love like sunlight. This was oxygen. This was life itself. Then she turned and walked toward home. The compound gate groaned as she pushed it open. The transformation happened in the space between one step and the next. Her shoulders dropped. Her face became stone. The smile died so completely it might never have existed at all. She crossed the threshold into silence so thick it pressed against her skin. Papa Okonkwo sat in his chair, reading by lamplight. He didn't look up. Their daughters moved in the kitchen like ghosts. 16-year-old Kioma stirred soup with mechanical precision, her eyes fixed on nothing. 12-year-old Ngozi set the table, each plate placed with careful silence. "Mama," Ngozi ventured softly, "wash your hands. Dinner is ready," Mama Adanna replied without inflection. 3 words, cold as river stones. They ate in crushing quiet. Fork scraping plate, liquid swallowing, Kioma's jaw working, mechanically. The air felt like it might shatter if anyone spoke too loud. After dinner, Kioma stood at her window, watching firelight from the village square where people were still celebrating. Her mother's laughter floated across the compound. She'd returned to tell another story. Kioma pressed her forehead against the glass, tears sliding hot down her cheeks. "Why?" she whispered to the darkness. "Why does everyone else get her light? If you're already feeling the weight of this story, hit that subscribe button now. This journey goes deeper than you can imagine, and you won't want to miss where it leads. Like this video if you've ever felt invisible to someone you love." The memory came unbidden, as it always did. Adanna, young, newly married, radiant, dancing through her kitchen 15 years ago. She'd been singing some foolish song about a bird and the morning sun, her hips swaying as she stirred the soup. Ikenna, not yet hardened into Papa Okonkwo, had come home from the farm to find his wife spinning through their home like joy given human form. "Adanna, stop this nonsense." She'd turned, smile still brilliant. "But I'm happy. Can't a wife be happy? A wife should be dignified." His voice cut like a knife wrapped in velvet. "Do you want the neighbours to think I married a marketplace clown?" The smile had flickered. "I'm just—" "Lower your voice. Compose yourself. What kind of home are you keeping if you cannot even maintain proper decorum?" She'd tried to explain that joy wasn't the opposite of dignity, that laughter didn't mean disrespect, that her happiness was a gift she wanted to share. But Ikenna had learned from his father, who learned from his father, stern men respected by the village, heads of households where children spoke only when spoken to and wives moved with quiet grace. "In my house," he'd said with terrible finality, "we will have order. We will have respect. We will not have this foolishness." Over the following weeks, he'd corrected her again and again. "Why are you singing? Stop that loud talking. Must you laugh at everything? People are watching. What will they think of me?" The village elders had nodded approvingly when they visited. "Ikenna keeps a proper home," they'd said. "So peaceful, so well ordered. You've trained your wife well." And Adanna, desperate to be a good wife, to make her husband proud, had tried. She'd bitten back jokes, swallowed laughter, moved quietly through their home like a shadow. The brightness inside her had fought like a caged animal thrashing against bars she couldn't see. Then Kioma was born. Adanna held her daughter, this tiny, perfect thing, and felt love so fierce it terrified her. The baby had colic, screaming for hours, inconsolable. Adanna walked the floor, exhausted beyond reason, trying everything. In desperation, she'd made funny faces, crossed her eyes, stuck out her tongue. Kioma had stopped crying, her little face had scrunched up, and she'd giggled. Actually giggled. The sound was sunlight breaking through clouds. Adanna had laughed in pure relief and bouncing the baby, making more silly faces, joy bubbling up, unstoppable. Ikenna had appeared in the doorway. "Even now you can't be serious." His voice was ice. "You're teaching our daughter to be a fool. Is this what you want? A child who thinks life is a joke?" She was crying. "I made her happy." "If you must act like a clown, do it elsewhere. Not in my house. Not in front of my daughter." Adanna had looked down at baby Kioma, at those innocent eyes staring up at her. Something inside her had cracked then. A fissure so deep it reached her foundation. She made a choice without words, a decision that lived in her bones. If laughter was forbidden here, she would save it, lock it away, find somewhere else to let it breathe. Watching baby Kioma's face, she'd made a silent promise. "I will not let him break you too, even if it means you never see me whole." The he. Years that followed were a study in division. Adanna learned to split herself so completely that the seam became invisible. At home, she was exactly what Ikenna wanted. Quiet, efficient, proper. Her face revealed nothing. Her voice carried no music. She cared for her daughters with mechanical competence, fed them, clothed them, kept them safe. But outside those walls, she breathed. It started at a women's meeting 3 years after Kioma's birth. The women were discussing whose son should marry, whose daughter taking themselves so seriously. Adanna, silent as always, had listened until she couldn't anymore. "You remind me," she'd said quietly, "of the time 2 chickens in my mother's compound argued for 3 days about which one would marry the rooster. They fought so long that the rooster got tired of waiting and flew over to the neighbour's yard. The women had stared. Then someone had giggled. Then someone else. Then laughter had rolled through the gathering like thunder. And Adanna had felt her soul gasp its first real breath in years. Old Mama Ngozi, the eldest woman in Ukwu village, had wiped her eyes. "Child, you have a gift. You must share it. The harvest festival is in 2 weeks. You should perform." "I don't know if I—" "The village needs joy," Mama Ngozi had said firmly, "and you need to remember you're alive." That first performance had been terrifying. Standing before hundreds, feeling their eyes. But then she'd opened her mouth, told a story about a stubborn yam that refused to be harvested, and the crowd had roared. Their laughter had poured into her like rain on drought-cracked earth. She'd found her purpose, her salvation, her secret life. Over the next decade, Mama Adanna became the village's treasure. She performed at weddings, bringing joy to nervous couples. She spoke at funerals, helping grief-stricken families remember their loved ones' laughter. She told stories at festivals that became legend. People came from 3 villages, away to hear her. "Mama Adanna saved my daughter's wedding," people would say. When the groom's family arrived angry about the dowry, she told a story that made everyone laugh so hard they forgot what they were fighting about. But every night, without fail, She returned home, crossed the threshold, let the stone face fall back into place, spoke in monosyllables to her husband and daughters, moved through her house like a ghost haunting its own life. Kioma and Ngozi grew up in this divided world. When Kioma was 11 and Ngozi 7, they'd snuck out one evening, following the sound of laughter to the village square. They'd hidden behind a wall and watched their mother transform into someone they didn't recognize. This woman was alive, electric. Her whole body was an instrument of joy. She told a story about a man who tried to teach his goat to read, and the crowd was hers completely. Even from their hiding spot, the girls could feel her power. "Is that really Mama?" Ngozi had whispered, eyes wide with wonder. "I don't know," Chioma had replied, and her voice had cracked on the words. They'd tried to bring that version home. The next evening, Ngozi had attempted a joke at dinner. "Mama, teacher said that, eat your food." Mama Adanna had cut her off without looking up. "But it's funny. At school today, I said eat." Kioma had tried a different approach. "Mama, will you tell us a story, like the ones you tell in the village?" Mama Adanna's fork had frozen halfway to her mouth. For one heartbeat, something had flickered in her eyes. Pain so raw, it was almost visible. Then, nothing. "I'm tired. Go to bed after you clean the dishes." Papa Okonkwo had continued eating, oblivious or uncaring. The girls had learned. Over months, then years they'd learned. Don't ask for stories. Don't try to make her laugh. Don't expect warmth. Accept the silence. Become part of it. But learning didn't mean the pain stopped. It grew, accumulating like sediment, layer upon layer of small rejections building into mountains of hurt. Kioma, the elder, had grown hard around the edges. At 16, she was brilliant, sharp-tongued, with grades that made teachers shake their heads in admiration. But she held herself apart from other students, unable to explain why laughter felt like betrayal. How could she tell them her mother gave joy to strangers, but hoarded silence for her daughters? The resentment had teeth. It lived in Kioma's chest, feeding on every performance she heard about. Every villager who praised the wonderful Mama Adanna. "Your mother is a blessing," they'd say to Kioma. "Yes," she'd reply through gritted teeth. "A blessing to everyone but us." Ngozi had stayed softer, hope somehow surviving. At 12, she still tried occasionally, a small joke, a funny observation. Each failure hurt her visibly, but she kept trying. It was either incredibly brave or heartbreaking, probably both. If this story is hitting too close to home, leave a comment below. Tell us about someone in your life who showed the world one face and you another. Sometimes sharing our pain helps us heal. And don't forget to like this video. It helps others find this story who might need it. Meanwhile, something was shifting in Papa Okonkwo. Age had softened him in ways he didn't understand. His father had died 3 years ago, taking with him the heavy weight of expectation, the fierce need to prove himself, to maintain the family's reputation for strict dignity, had begun to feel less urgent. He'd started noticing things he'd been too rigid to see before, the way other families laughed together over meals, how his colleague Emeka's children ran to hug him when he came home, the warmth in homes where joy wasn't rationed like a scarce resource. He'd look at his own daughters, so distant and careful, and feel something twist in his chest. When had Kioma stopped smiling at him? When had Ngozi learned to make herself small and quiet? One evening, he'd been walking past the village square during one of Adanna's performances. He'd never attended before. It was beneath his dignity to stand in crowds like a common villager. But curiosity, or maybe guilt, had made him pause at the edge of the gathering. He'd watched his wife of 18 years become someone he'd never known. She was brilliant, magnetic, alive in a way that made his chest ache. This was Adanna, not the silent shadow in his home, but Adanna, the woman he'd married, The girl who danced through their kitchen singing. The woman he'd systematically destroyed. The realization had hit him like a physical blow. He'd stumbled away from the crowd, chest tight, unable to breathe properly. In his workshop that night, he'd sat in the dark, memory after memory assaulting him. Stop this nonsense. Lower your voice. What will people think? If you must act like a clown, do it elsewhere. His father's voice speaking through his mouth. His grandfather's. Beliefs living in his bones. Generation after generation of men who'd confused control with love, silence with respect, suppression with order. He'd tried, in recent months, to make it right. Small gestures. He'd brought Adanna flowers from the market. She'd thanked him politely, put them in water, and turned away. He'd attempted conversation. How was your day? Fine. The weather is changing. Yes. I thought we might. I have work to finish. The wall between them was too high, built brick by brick over years, mortared with hurt and bitterness and resignation. He didn't know how to scale it, didn't have the words to say, I was wrong. I destroyed the best thing about you because I was too proud and too stupid to see it was the best thing about us. Pride still held his tongue. He'd been taught that admitting error was weakness, that a man who changed his mind was unstable. That authority, once established, must never waver. So he'd suffered in silence, which was its own justice. Then came the announcement about the annual Harvest Festival. The village council had declared that this year's celebration would be the biggest in a decade, and Mama Adanna would be the featured performer, her name on posters throughout Ukwu and the neighbouring villages. At dinner that evening, Papa Okonkwo had cleared his throat. I think I should attend the festival this year. Silence. Then Adanna had looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in months. Why? You've never cared before. I want to see. I want to understand. Understand what? Her voice was sharp as broken glass. The foolishness, the clowning, isn't that what you called it? The words hung between them, years of bitterness distilled into 2 sentences. Adanna, there's nothing to understand, Ikenna. It's just what you always said it was. Entertainment for people who have nothing better to do. She stood abruptly. Excuse me, I have preparations to make. She'd left the table. Papa Okonkwo had sat frozen, his own words thrown back at him, each one a small knife. Chioma had been listening from the kitchen doorway. Something in that exchange had cracked open the careful control she'd built around her anger. Her mother's pain, usually invisible, had been naked in that moment, and her father's regret, however inadequate, had been real. 3 days before the festival, everything exploded. It started like any dinner. Silent plates, mechanical chewing, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on them. Chioma pushed food around her plate, her jaw tight. Ngozi ate quickly, eyes down. Mama Adanna and Papa Okonkwo occupied the same space without acknowledging each other's existence. Then Chioma's fork clattered against her plate. I can't do this anymore. Everyone froze. Chioma! Papa Okonkwo started. No. She stood, chair scraping loud in the silence. She turned to her mother, and 16 years of pain came pouring out. Why do you hate us? I don't. Don't lie. You save all your joy for strangers. The whole village loves you. They think you're amazing, but we get nothing. We live in your house and we get nothing. You don't understand. Mama Adanna's voice was strained, the mask slipping. Then make me understand. Chioma's voice broke. I have spent my entire life trying to earn one smile from you, one real smile. One moment where you look at me the way you look at those people at the village square. What did we do? What did I do to make you hate me so much? I don't hate you. Mama Adanna stood now too, her hands shaking. I've never hated you. Then what is it? Because this... Kioma gestured at the cold, silent room. This is not love. This is not what mothers do. Ngozi tells jokes, and you shut her down like she's annoying you. I ask you for help with school, and you answer in 3 words. We are your daughters, and you treat us like inconvenient strangers. Tears were streaming down Kioma's face. Now, and Ngozi had started crying silently in the corner. Papa Okonkwo sat like stone, guilt crushing his chest. I did it for you. Mama Adanna whispered, and her voice was raw, to protect you. Protect us from what? From joy? From laughter? From having a mother who actually loves us? From him. The words exploded out of Mama Adanna, and she pointed at Papa Okonkwo. From his rules and his judgment and his crushing need for everyone to be quiet and proper and dead inside. Papa Okonkwo flinched like he'd been struck. When you were a baby, Mama Adanna continued, her voice shaking, I made you laugh. You were crying, and I made funny faces, and you laughed, and her finger was still pointing. He told me I was teaching you to be a fool. He said laughter in his house was foolishness. So I chose. I chose to save my joy for outside, where it wouldn't infect you with whatever weakness he thought it represented. I chose to be stone so you could learn to be stone and survive in this house. She was crying now, tears running down her face, the carefully constructed walls crumbling. I gave you what he wanted, quiet, proper daughters who wouldn't embarrass him, and I gave the rest of the world everything else because if I couldn't laugh somewhere, I would have died. I was trying to protect you, and all I did was make you hate me. The silence that followed was different, not empty, but full, charged with years of pain finally spoken aloud. Kioma stood shaking, watching her mother cry for the first time she could remember. The anger was still there, but something else was breaking through. Understanding, maybe, or the beginning of it. You made the wrong choice, Kioma said, but her voice was softer now. You should have fought him. You should have fought for us. I know, Mama Adanna whispered. I know. Papa Okonkwo slowly stood. He looked ancient suddenly, every one of his 45 years carved into his face. Adanna, don't. She held up a hand. Not now. I need air. She left through the back door. They heard her footsteps. Then nothing. Papa Okonkwo sank back into his chair. He looked at his daughters. Kioma angry and crying, Ngozi terrified and small. He'd done this. Built this prison for all of them, brick by brick. I destroyed your mother, he said quietly, and in destroying her I destroyed all of us. Kioma wiped her face with the back of her hand. What are you going to do about it? I don't know. Then figure it out, she said and walked to her room. That night, Papa Okonkwo sat outside under the stars, unable to sleep. Memories flooded him. Young Adanna dancing, singing, alive. Her laughter like bells. The exact moment he'd told her to stop. The way her face had fallen. He'd been so sure, so certain that dignity meant silence, that respect meant control, that strength meant never bending. His father had never laughed with his mother. His grandfather had ruled his household with iron discipline. That was what men did. That was strength. But sitting in the dark, looking at the ruins of his family, he finally understood. It wasn't strength, it was cowardice. Hiding behind tradition and propriety, because actually loving people, letting them be themselves, was terrifying and messy, and required courage he hadn't possessed. He wept. Not pretty tears, but ugly, gasping sobs, for Adanna's stolen joy. For his daughter's childhood spent walking on eggshells, for the man he'd been and the man he'd failed to become. By dawn, he'd made a decision. We're approaching the moment everything changes. If you're invested in this family's healing, smash that like button. Drop a comment with your thoughts. Has this story made you think differently about the people in your life? Share this video with someone who needs to see it. Now, let's watch what happens when pride finally breaks. Festival day arrived with perfect weather, clear skies, a warm breeze, the kind of evening that makes you believe good things are possible. The village square transformed into magic. Lanterns hung from every tree. Market stalls offered roasted corn, fried plantains, palm wine. Children ran shrieking between the adults, faces painted, drunk on excitement. The performance area had been expanded, a proper stage constructed. This was Mama Adanna's biggest audience yet, and the anticipation was electric. People had travelled from 4 villages to see her. Backstage, Mama Adanna stood before a small mirror, putting on her face. Not makeup, she wore none, but the mask. The version of herself that could stand before hundreds and be fearless. Her hands shook slightly as she adjusted her wrapper. She knew Ikenna was coming. It shouldn't matter. She'd performed for thousands over the years. One more face in the crowd changed nothing, except it changed everything. In the gathering crowd, Papa Okonkwo found a spot toward the back. His heart hammered against his ribs. Chioma and Ngozi arrived separately, surprised to see their father. They stood together, a fractured family unit, waiting. The drums began. The crowd pressed forward. Energy rippled through the square like lightning before a storm. Mama Adanna stepped onto the stage. The transformation was complete, instantaneous. She was radiant, powerful, alive. The crowd roared its welcome. She spread her arms, and they settled into expectant silence. Tonight, she began, her voice carrying to the edges of the square. I will tell you a story about a man and his songbird. Something in her tone made Papa Okonkwo's stomach drop. This man loved his songbird very much. More than anything, he wanted to keep it safe, to protect it from the world. So he built a cage, beautiful cage. Strong cage. Here, he told the bird, you will always be safe. The crowd listened, sensing something different in this story. At first, the bird sang for him. Every morning, beautiful songs that made the sunrise sweeter. But the man worried. Your singing is too loud, he told the bird. What will the neighbours think? They will say I cannot control my own household if my bird sings so freely. You must be quieter, more dignified, more proper. Papa Okonkwo's eyes filled with tears. The people around him listened, unaware that this story was a knife to his heart. So the bird tried. She sang more quietly, then quieter still, until one day she stopped singing for him altogether. The man was pleased. Finally, he thought, a proper bird, a bird that knows its place. Mama Adanna's voice was steady, but her eyes found Papa Okonkwo in the crowd, held his gaze. But the bird still needed to sing. It was her nature, her soul, her reason for being. So every day, when the man was away, she would sing out the window, and the neighbours would gather to listen. They would call her beautiful. They would say, what a gift this bird has. How lucky that man is to have such a treasure in his home. The irony in her voice was subtle but cutting. The man would come home each evening to silence. The bird would sit in her cage, quiet, stone still, exactly as he wanted, and he was content. The bird was safe. The bird was proper. The bird was controlled. Mama Adanna paused. When she continued, her voice was softer, sadder. Years passed this way. The man aged. He began to notice other things, other homes where birds sang freely, where cages had open doors, where joy was not rationed but shared. He started to understand, slowly, that he had not protected his bird. He had buried her alive. Papa Okonkwo was openly crying now. People near him glanced over, confused. One day, the man went to where the neighbours gathered to hear his bird sing, and for the first time, he truly saw her, alive, brilliant, magnificent. Everything she could have been was supposed to be, and he realised the cage was not protection. The cage was the problem. The cage was murder dressed up as love. Her voice broke slightly on the last words. The bird saw the man watching, and in that moment, they both understood the same truth. You cannot cage a song. You can only kill it or set it free. Silence blanketed the square. This wasn't the comedy they'd expected. This was truth so raw it hurt to hear. Then Mama Adanna straightened. The question is, did the man open the cage? Did he say, "I was wrong, and I am sorry, and I should have let you sing"? Or did he stand there full of regret but paralysed by pride and watch his bird die slowly behind bars he'd built? She looked directly at Papa Okonkwo. What do you think? Did he have the courage to set her free? The question hung in the air. The crowd began to murmur, sensing this was more than performance, that something real was happening. Papa Okonkwo stood. His legs shook, but he stood. He began walking towards the stage. The crowd parted, confused, curious. Chioma grabbed Ngozi's hand, both of them frozen. He reached the stage, climbed the steps, stood before his wife in front of 300 witnesses. Someone handed him a microphone without him asking. His hand trembled so badly the microphone shook. "My name is Ikenna Okonkwo," he said, voice cracking, "and my wife is the village's greatest joy. She brings light to everyone she meets. She has saved marriages with her wisdom, comforted the grieving with her stories, brought laughter to the darkest days." He took a shaky breath. "But I am the reason she has no joy in her own home." The crowd's murmur died completely. I told her laughter was foolishness. I told her joy was undignified. I built walls around her spirit and called it protection. I took the brightest thing about her and locked it away because I was too proud and too afraid to let her shine. Tears ran freely down his face. He didn't wipe them. I made her a stranger to her own children. Our daughters grew up thinking their mother didn't love them because I taught their mother that love had to be quiet and serious and dead. I killed the song in my own home and wondered why the silence felt like mourning. His voice dropped to almost a whisper, but the microphone carried it. "Adanna, I was wrong. About everything. My father was wrong. His father was wrong. Dignity is not silence. Respect is not control. And love, real love, is not a cage." He fell to his knees before her, before everyone. "I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't deserve another chance, but I am asking. I am begging. I will spend the rest of my life trying to repair what I broke. I will tear down every wall I built. I will tell our daughters every day that I was wrong, and you were right. And the greatest mistake of my life was making you smaller because I was too weak to let you be magnificent." The silence was absolute. 300 people held their breath. Mama Adanna stood frozen, tears streaming down her face, years of pain, resentment, resignation, all of it, visible in this moment. The mask was completely gone. She was just Adanna, raw and hurt and somehow still standing. She looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in years, saw his pain, his regret, his desperate sincerity, saw the man she'd married somewhere under the man he'd become. Slowly she reached out, touched his face. Her hand shook. "You broke me," she whispered, but the microphone caught it. "You took the best parts of me and told me they were wrong. I know. I lost years with my daughters because of you. I know. I don't know if I can forgive you. I know." She was quiet for a long moment. Then, "But I'm tired, Ikenna. I'm so tired of carrying this anger. I'm tired of being two people. I'm tired of stone and silence and pretending I'm dead inside." She pulled him to his feet. They stood facing each other, years of damage between them, but also years of history, of love buried under rubble. "I can't promise it will be easy," she said. "I can't promise I won't still be angry, but I'm willing to try. For our daughters, for the people we used to be, for the people we might still become." He nodded, unable to speak. She took his hand, turned to the crowd. "My husband has spent years trying to cage a songbird. Tonight, he opened the door. We'll see if she remembers how to fly." Then she pulled him into an embrace. The crowd exploded, cheering, crying, the collective release of tension so powerful it was almost physical. Kioma and Ngozi pushed through the crowd, reached the stage, climbed up, and for the first time in their remembered lives, all four of them stood together, holding each other while the village witnessed their breaking and their beginning to heal. Before we finish this journey, make sure you're subscribed to this channel, hit that notification bell so you never miss stories that matter, and please leave a comment below. Tell us what this story meant to you. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. 6 weeks after the festival, morning light filtered through the kitchen windows of the Okonkwo home. The house still looked the same. Same walls, same furniture, same compound, but something fundamental had shifted in the air. Ngozi sat at the breakfast table, bouncing slightly with nervous energy. She cleared her throat. "Mama, Papa, I have a joke." Everyone looked up. Mama Adanna's hands paused over the pot she was stirring. Papa Okonkwo lowered his newspaper. Chioma stopped cutting fruit, watching carefully. "Teacher asked Emeka," Ngozi began, voice shaking slightly, "why he was late to school. Emeka said, 'Sorry, sir, I was dreaming about a football match and it went into extra time.'" Silence. Then Papa Okonkwo's face crinkled. A small sound escaped him. Rusty, unpracticed, but unmistakable. Laughter. Mama Adanna's lips twitched, then curved. Then she smiled. Small, tentative, but real. That's actually funny, sweetheart." Ngozi's face lit up like sunrise. "Really? Really?" It wasn't much. The smile was tiny, the laughter brief, but it was there, present, real. Kioma felt tears prick her eyes and blinked them back. She reached across the table and squeezed Ngozi's hand. "Good joke, little sister." They finished breakfast with actual conversation, halting, sometimes awkward, but conversation nonetheless. Papa Okonkwo asked Chioma about her upcoming exams. She answered with more than 3 words. Mama Adanna mentioned a performance next week. Papa Okonkwo asked if he could attend. She said yes. Small things, ordinary things, things most families did without thinking. For them, each word was archaeology, carefully excavating a relationship from years of burial. After breakfast, as Kioma helped clear dishes, she found her mother alone in the kitchen. They stood side by side in silence, but different silence now, not empty, just quiet. "Mama," Kioma said softly, "I'm sorry, I said you hated us. You had every right to be angry. Maybe, but hate. You didn't hate us. I understand that now. You were just trying to survive." Mama Adanna set down the plate she was washing, turned to face her daughter. "I made the wrong choice, baby. I see that now. I should have fought harder. I should have let you see all of me, not just the acceptable parts. You were trying to protect us. I was protecting myself." The honesty was sharp. I told myself it was for you, but really, I was just too tired and too broken to fight anymore. That's not your burden to carry. That's mine. Kioma nodded slowly. Are we going to be okay? I don't know. Mama Adanna said honestly, but I'm going to try. Every day, I'm going to try to be the mother you deserved from the beginning. She reached out, hesitant, and touched Kioma's cheek. I love you. I know I haven't shown it. I know I've been cold and distant and everything a mother shouldn't be, but I love you so much it terrifies me. Kioma leaned into the touch, starving for it, tears spilling over. I love you too, Mama. They embraced then, really embraced, not the stiff, obligatory hugs of before, but something real and desperate and healing. That evening, after dinner where people had talked and even laughed twice, Papa Okonkwo gathered everyone in the sitting room. He'd been planning this for days, rehearsing words in his workshop, trying to find the right way to say what needed saying. I want to tell you both something, he said to his daughters. His voice was steady, but his hands shook slightly. About my father, your grandfather. Kioma and Ngozi exchanged glances. Papa rarely spoke about his childhood. My father was a hard man. Respected, yes. Feared, definitely. In our house, children were seen, not heard. My mother never raised her voice, never laughed loudly, never questioned him. I thought that was strength. I thought that was how real men led their families. He paused, gathering. Courage. I was wrong. My father's house was not strong. It was silent. And silence is not the same as peace. I learned to be a man from someone who confused control with love, and I pass that poison on to you, to your mother, to this home. Mama Adanna sat in the corner, listening, her face unreadable. I'm learning now, Papa Okonkwo continued. That real strength is admitting when you're wrong. Real courage is changing, even when everything in you screams to stay the same, because that's what you know, and real love. Real love lets people be who they are, not who you need them to be to feel comfortable. He looked at Mama Adanna. Your mother is extraordinary. She always has been. And instead of celebrating that, I tried to dim her light because it made me feel inadequate. That's my shame to carry, not hers. Ngozi spoke up, voice small. Papa, do you like Mama's performances now? He smiled, still awkward at it, but genuine. Like them? Ngozi, your mother is the most talented person I've ever known. Watching her perform, seeing how she brings joy to people, how she heals them with laughter. I'm in awe of her. I always should have been. Then why did you try to stop her? Kioma's voice was careful, not accusing, just seeking to understand. Because I was afraid of what people would think, afraid that if she was too bright, too alive, it would show how dull I was. Afraid that if she was herself completely, she wouldn't need me anymore. He shook his head. Fear makes us cruel in ways we don't even recognize until the damage is done. The room fell quiet. Outside, crickets sang their evening chorus. A dog barked in the distance, normal sounds of life continuing. Can I ask you something? Kioma said finally. Are you changing because you want to, or because Mama's story embarrassed you in front of the village? It was a fair question, a hard question. Papa Okonkwo considered it carefully. Both, maybe, he admitted. The embarrassment cracked something open, made me see what I'd become from the outside, but the wanting to change, that started before. Watching you girls grow distant, seeing the emptiness in this house, realizing I'd built a prison and called it a home. The festival just forced me to finally do something about it. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I can't undo the past. I can't give you back the childhood you should have had, with a mother who smiled at you and a father who didn't make everyone walk on eggshells. But I can try to be better now. That's all I have. The chance to be better now. Ngozi stood up and without a word walked over and hugged him. Just like that. Simple, pure, the forgiveness of a child who still believes people can change. Papa Okonkwo wrapped his arms around her, his face crumpling. "I'm sorry, baby girl. I'm so sorry." "I know, Papa," she whispered. "It's okay." It wasn't okay. Not really. Not yet. But it was a beginning. Kioma remained, seated, watching. She wasn't ready for easy forgiveness yet, and that was fair too. Some wounds need more time, but she nodded at her father, and in that nod was acknowledgement of his effort, his honesty, his trying. That night, after the girls had gone to bed, Mama Adanna and Papa Okonkwo sat together on the veranda. They'd done this thousands of times over 18 years of marriage, but tonight felt different. The silence between them wasn't hostile, just heavy with history. "I've been thinking," Papa Okonkwo said finally, "about what happens next." Next? For us, for this marriage, I meant what I said at the festival. I want to repair what I broke, but I don't actually know how. I don't know where to start. Mama Adanna was quiet for a long moment. "Neither do I," she admitted. "I'm so used to being angry at you, to keeping walls up, that I don't know how to just be with you anymore." "Do you want to try?" "I don't know." The honesty was brutal but necessary. "Some days I look at you and I just see all the years of silence, all the times you made me feel small, all the joy you stole from our daughters." "I understand. But other days," she continued, "I remember why I married you. You were kind once. Did you know that? When we were courting, you were gentle. You brought me flowers. You laughed at my jokes. I fell in love with that man. I don't know if he still exists under all the hardness. I want to find him again." Papa Okonkwo said quietly, "I want to be the man who deserved you, even if I'm 18 years too late." "It's going to be hard," Mama Adanna warned. "I'm not going to pretend overnight that everything is fine. I'm still angry. I'm still hurt. And I'm definitely not going back to being silent and small to make you comfortable. I don't want you to." "Good. Because the woman you saw at that festival, that's who I am. Loud, joyful, taking up space, making people laugh. That's not a costume I put on. That's me. If you can't handle that in your home, in your life, every single day, then we need to admit this won't work." Papa Okonkwo met her eyes. "I want that woman in my home. I want to wake up to your laughter. I want our daughters to know their mother's joy. I want to be worthy of being married to someone so alive." "That's a nice thing to say." "It's the truth." Mama Adanna studied him, trying to read sincerity in the dim light. "Okay," she said finally. "We'll try. But Ikenna, if you ever tell me I'm too loud, too much, too joyful again, I'm done. I will take my daughters and I will leave. I will not be caged again. Not by you, not by anyone. Do you understand?" "I understand." "Say it. Say you won't try to change me." "I won't try to change you. I swear on everything I have." She nodded slowly. "Then we'll see. We'll take it day by day and see if we can find our way back to each other." They sat in silence again, but this time Papa Okonkwo reached out tentatively and took her hand. She didn't pull away. They stayed like that, hands loosely intertwined, two people trying to bridge a chasm of their own making. The weeks that followed were not easy. Healing never is. There were setbacks, moments when old patterns threatened to resurface. One evening, Mama Adanna was preparing for a performance, singing to herself in the bedroom while getting dressed. Papa Okonkwo had opened his mouth to say something, old instinct rising, the urge to tell her to quiet down. But he'd caught himself, literally put his hand over his mouth, left the room, sat outside until the urge passed. When Mama Adanna came out, dressed and ready, she'd seen him on the veranda, looking shaken. What happened? I almost did it again, he'd admitted. You were singing, and I almost told you to stop. She'd tensed immediately, walls going up. But I didn't, he'd continued quickly. I caught myself. I left. I'm learning, Adanna. It's not fast, but I'm learning. The tension had eased slightly. You're going to slip up sometimes, she'd said. Old habits don't die easily. What matters is what you do when you catch yourself. I'll keep catching myself, every time. Another evening, Kioma had gotten angry about something minor, a misplaced book, and had snapped at Mama Adanna with real venom. The kind of anger that had nothing to do with books and everything to do with 16 years of stored resentment. Mama Adanna had absorbed it, patient, understanding that healing wasn't linear. You're allowed to be angry at me, she'd said calmly. You're allowed to need time. I hurt you, baby. That doesn't go away just because I'm trying now. Kioma had broken down crying. I want to forgive you. I want to move past this. But some days I'm just so angry. Then be angry. I can take it. I owe you that much. They'd talked for hours that night. Kioma finally able to voice all the small rejections she'd accumulated over the years, every time she'd watched her. Mother light up for strangers and shut down at home. Mama Adanna had listened without defending herself, acknowledging each hurt, taking responsibility. It wasn't comfortable. It wasn't neat. But it was real progress. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, the house began to change. Laughter started to happen spontaneously, not just in controlled moments, but unexpectedly. Ngozi would say something silly and everyone would laugh. Real laughter, not the careful, measured kind. Mama Adanna began telling stories at home, small ones at first. Nothing like her public performances, just amusing observations about her day. The first time she did it, everyone had frozen, unsure if this was allowed, if it would last. But she'd kept going, and slowly they'd relaxed into it. Papa Okonkwo started asking questions about her performances. What story are you telling at the wedding this weekend? Not with judgment, but genuine interest. She'd been suspicious at first, waiting for criticism, but he'd just listened and said things like, that sounds wonderful, or they're lucky to have you. The first time he attended one of her performances after the festival, sitting in the front row, Mama Adanna had been terrified. What if she couldn't perform with him watching? What if his presence brought back all the shame and fear? But she'd stepped onto that stage, found his face in the crowd, and seen only admiration. Pure, uncomplicated admiration. And she'd performed brilliantly, maybe more brilliantly than ever, because for the first time she wasn't performing in spite of her husband, but with his support. Afterward, he'd hugged her. You were magnificent. You're not embarrassed. Embarrassed. Adanna, I've never been more proud of anything in my life. That's my wife. That incredible woman is my wife. She'd cried then, the release of 18 years of shame lifting off her shoulders. 3 months after the festival, on a Sunday afternoon, something remarkable happened. The family was gathered in the sitting room. Papa Okonkwo reading, Mama Adanna mending clothes, the girls doing homework. Completely ordinary, completely normal. Then Mama Adanna started humming. Everyone looked up. She caught herself, started to stop, but Papa Okonkwo smiled and said, Don't stop, please. So she kept humming, then quietly singing. An old song from her childhood, something about rain and growing things. Ngozi joined in on the chorus, her young voice blending with her mother's. Then, miraculously, Papa Okonkwo's deep voice added a harmony, rough, unpracticed, but there. Kioma watched, stunned as her family sang together, just like that, as if it was normal, as if they'd always done this. When the song ended, no one spoke. They just looked at each other, amazed by this small miracle, a family finding their voice together. That evening, after dinner, Mama Adanna asked if she could tell everyone a story. Not a performance, just a story for them. They gathered. In the sitting room, the girls on the floor, Papa Okonkwo in his chair, Mama Adanna sitting on the arm of the sofa. "This is a story," she began, her voice warm and gentle, about a woman who forgot how to fly. She told them about a bird born with magnificent wings, who'd lived in a cage so long she'd forgotten what they were for. How her children had never seen her fly and thought birds were meant to walk. How one day something had reminded her that wings weren't decorative, they were for soaring. The bird was scared, Mama Adanna said. She'd been ground-bound so long that the sky seemed impossible. What if her wings didn't work anymore? What if she'd forgotten how? What if she fell? She paused, looking at each of her family members, but her children said, "Mama Bird, we want to see you fly. Even if you fall, we want to see you try." And her mate said, "I'm sorry I ever told you the ground was where you belonged. Fly, please fly." Tears were streaming down everyone's faces now. So the bird spread her wings, rusty, uncertain, but still there, and she jumped, and she fell a little at first, because she was out of practice, but then she remembered. Her wings remembered, and she flew. Mama Adanna's voice was thick with emotion. She flew so high and so far that her children looked up in wonder and said, "That's our mama, and she can fly." And it was beautiful. Ngozi climbed into her mother's lap, something she hadn't done in years. "You can fly, Mama. We see you flying." Kioma moved closer too, resting her head on her mother's shoulder. "We're proud of you." Papa Okonkwo knelt beside them all, his family, these 3 women he'd hurt and who were somehow giving him another chance. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for letting me witness this. Thank you for not giving up on us." They stayed like that, tangled together, a family slowly learning what love looks like when it's not built on control, but on freedom, not on silence, but on joy. If this story has touched your heart, we need you to do something. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, someone trapped in silence, someone who's forgotten their wings, someone who needs permission to be fully themselves. Drop a comment telling us what moment hit you hardest, and subscribe to this channel, because stories like this, stories that matter, that heal, that remind us we're not alone, they need to be told. They need to reach the people who need them most. 6 months after the festival, Mama Adanna received an invitation to perform at a regional celebration, 3 villages together, the biggest audience she'd ever had, 1,000 people, maybe more. At dinner, she announced it nervously, "They want me to perform at the Unity Festival next month." "That's amazing!" Ngozi bounced in her seat. "Can we come watch?" "Of course you can come." Papa Okonkwo set down his fork. "Adanna, this is a huge honour. You must be thrilled." "I am. But I'm also terrified. It's so many people. What if I mess up? What if my stories aren't good enough for such a big stage?" It was the first time she'd been vulnerable with them about her fears. The first time she'd let them see that even the confident performer had doubts. "Mama," Kioma said firmly, "you're going to be incredible. You always are." "You think so?" "I know so. I've watched you perform 3 times now, and every time I think, how did I not see how talented she is? You're a gift, Mama. The whole region should get to experience that." Mama Adanna's eyes filled with tears. Hearing her daughter's pride, after years of distance, was almost too much. Papa Okonkwo reached across the table and took her hand. You're going to walk onto that stage and you're going to remind everyone why you're the best storyteller in this region, and we'll be in the front row, cheering so loud they'll hear us in the next village. The night of the Unity Festival arrived with ceremony and grandeur. Dignitaries attended, traditional dancers performed, musicians filled the air with rhythm, and Mama Adanna, heart-pounding, stood backstage waiting for her turn. Papa Okonkwo found her there, saw her hands shaking. Nervous, terrified, he took both her hands in his. Adanna, do you remember what you told me once, when we were first married? Before I ruined everything. She shook her head. You said, joy is not frivolous. Joy is medicine. When people laugh together, their burdens get lighter. You were right. You've always been right. Tonight, you're going to give 1,000 people that medicine. You're going to remind them that even in hard times, joy exists. That's not small. That's sacred. She stared at him, amazed. You remembered that? I remember everything about who you were before I tried to change you, and I'm watching you become that person again, but stronger now. Unbreakable. Magnificent. Ikenna! Go out there and fly, my love. Your family is watching. Your village is watching. And we are all so proud. The announcement came. Mama Adanna walked onto the stage, and the roar from the crowd nearly knocked her backward. 1,000 faces, eager and excited and ready to be transported. She found her family in the front row. Papa Okonkwo gave her a thumbs up. Chioma and Ngozi were beaming. Her people, her foundation, her wings. Mama Adanna spread her arms, smiled that brilliant smile that could light up darkness, and began. Tonight, I want to tell you about the day Chief Emeka's goat decided to run for village chairman. The laughter started before she even got to the funny part, and it continued. Wave after wave, joy rippling through the crowd like wind through tall grass. She told 3 stories that night, each one landing perfectly, each one reminding people why they'd come. But the final story was different, quieter, more personal. I want to tell you about transformation, she said, her voice soft but carrying. About cages we build for ourselves and for each other, about the courage it takes to say, I was wrong, and the grace it takes to say, I forgive you, about families that break and slowly, painfully, learn to heal. She told them, in metaphor and symbol, about her own journey, not explicitly. Some things were private, but enough that those who knew understood, and those who didn't know still felt the truth of it. Change is possible, she said as she concluded. Not easy, not quick, not without pain and work and falling down and getting back up, but possible, always, always possible. As long as we're breathing, we can choose differently. We can become who we were meant to be. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. People were crying openly, inspired not just by her talent, but by her truth. Backstage, her family mobbed her. Ngozi was shrieking with excitement. Chioma was crying happy tears. Papa Okonkwo just held her, his face buried in her shoulder, whispering, Thank you. Thank you for not giving up on us. The village elders approached to congratulate her. One old man, ancient and respected, took her hand gently. Mama Adanna, you have given our people something precious tonight. Not just laughter, but hope. Hope that we can change, that our mistakes don't have to define us forever. Thank you. As they walked home that night, the 4 of them together, the stars were impossibly bright overhead. Ngozi chattered excitedly about her favourite parts of the performance. Chioma walked beside her mother, their shoulders touching. Papa Okonkwo held Mama Adanna's hand, their fingers interlaced naturally, comfortably. I love you, Papa Okonkwo said quietly, just to her. Mama Adanna squeezed his hand. I love you too. I never stopped, even when I wanted to, even when I was so angry I couldn't see straight. Underneath all of it, I loved you. I don't deserve that. Probably not, she said with a small smile. But love isn't always about deserving. Sometimes it's about choosing. I'm choosing to love you again, Ikenna. Every day, I'm choosing it. Don't make me regret it. I won't. I swear I won't. They reached their compound, and for the first time in 18 years, Mama Adanna walked through that gate and didn't feel her spirit die. The house that had been a prison was slowly becoming a home. It would take time, maybe years more, but it was happening. Inside, they made tea and sat together in the sitting room. Mama Adanna began talking about ideas for her next performance, and everyone contributed suggestions. They laughed together, easily, naturally, like families do, like they should have been doing all along. Later, after the girls had gone to bed, Mama Adanna stood at her bedroom window, looking out at the night. Papa Okonkwo came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. She leaned back into him, and they stood like that, breathing together. "Are you happy?" he asked. She considered the question, honestly. "I'm getting there. Some days I'm angry still. Some days the hurt feels fresh. But some days I wake up and I realise I laughed the day before. Really laughed, at home with my family. And those days, yes, I'm happy. That's enough for me. Those days are everything. Ikenna, do you know what the hardest part is? Not the performances, not the juggling, not any of that. It's believing it will last, believing you won't wake up one day and decide I'm too much again. That's what terrifies me." He turned her to face him, his hands on her shoulders. "Look at me. Really look. I am not the man I was. I've spent 6 months unlearning everything I thought I knew about strength and control, and what it means to be a husband. I've watched you bloom again, and it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Why would I ever want to destroy that?" People slip back. They fall into old patterns. Then, hold me accountable. If I ever start trying to cage you again, you call me out. You remind me. You don't let me slip. And if I can't change, you take our daughters and you leave. I mean that, Adanna. Your joy matters more than my pride, always. She searched his face, looking for cracks, for insincerity, found only truth. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." They went to bed that night, without walls between them, just two people trying to find their way back to each other, one day at a time. This is how healing happens. Not in dramatic moments, though those matter too, but in the quiet choices. The decision to be vulnerable when it's easier to hide. The choice to forgive when holding grudges feels safer. The courage to laugh when silence has been the norm for so long. Mama Adanna's story didn't end with that festival night, with Papa Okonkwo's public apology. That was just the beginning. The real work came after. In the daily practice of being a family, in learning to trust again, in Kioma and Ngozi slowly opening their hearts, in Papa Okonkwo catching himself every time old instincts rose. Some days were harder than others. Some days, the ghosts of who they'd been haunted them. But they kept trying, kept choosing each other, kept believing that broken things could be repaired if you were willing to do the work. And slowly, the house filled with something it hadn't held in 18 years. Not just laughter, though there was plenty of that. Not just conversation, though the silence finally broke. But joy, real, sustainable, everyday joy, the kind that comes from being fully yourself in a space that celebrates rather than suppresses you. Mama Adanna learned to bring her whole self home. Papa Okonkwo learned that his wife's magnificence didn't diminish him, it elevated them both. Kioma learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, but it does mean releasing the weight of bitterness. Ngozi learned that hope isn't foolish, Sometimes it's the bravest thing you can hold on to. They became, slowly, the family they should have been all along. Not perfect. Perfection is a cage of its own, but real, honest, present, alive. And Mama Adanna, she kept performing, kept bringing joy to her village and beyond. But now, when she walked through her compound gate at the end of the night, she didn't leave that joy behind. She brought it home. She let her daughters see her whole, her husband love her complete, her true self exist in every space she occupied. The caged bird had remembered her wings, and she was soaring. If you've made it this far, you're part of this journey now. This story isn't just entertainment, it's a mirror, a challenge, an invitation to examine your own life. Are you caging anyone? Are you caged? What would it take to open those doors? Share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to carry these stories forward. Like this video to help others find it. And most importantly, take this message into your own life. Choose freedom. Choose authenticity. Choose joy. Every single day, choose it. Because life is too short to live it small, silent, and caged. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and thank you for believing that change is possible.